Earth was a relic world scheduled for compliance, not conversation. High Council Commander Tathrix observed the blue sphere rotate beneath the tactical overlay, its oceans luminous, its cities fragile. The classification tag pulsed beside it. Pre-industrial adjacent, kinetic reliant, cultural fragmentation. A footnote at the bottom confirmed what mattered. Processing authorized. Population redistribution pending. Assets recoverable within acceptable loss margins. 10,000 Council. Vessels held formation across the heliopause, elegant hulls flaring with containment fields and harmonic drives. Against them, 67 human ships drifted in a loose arc, armor scarred, profiles blunt, emissions low. No energy lattices, no psionic modulation, just mass and metal. The bridge screens annotated the disparity automatically. 10,000 to 67. Probability of meaningful resistance, 0.003%. Tathrix allowed a faint curl of amusement through his frill. Transmit the compliance order, he said. Standard language, minimal translation effort. The message went out, encoded in 36 trade dialects. Humanity was instructed to stand down, power down, and prepare for custodial transfer. Civilian movement would be supervised. Military personnel would be catalogued. Cultural artifacts would be archived. Resistance would be met with corrective force. Processing would begin in precisely 18 minutes. The human fleet did not respond. Silence persisted across the channel. No counter-signal, no insult, no appeal. Their ships maintained position, heat signatures steady, drives idle. Even their planetary networks remained quiet, traffic thinning instead of spiking. Tathrix felt the first irritation stir. Primitive species always shouted. They begged or blustered. They broadcast defiance for the record. These ones did nothing. Perhaps they lack unified command, a liaison offered. We can... No, Tathrix said. He gestured and the tactical clock magnified. 14 minutes remained. They understand us. They are simply slow. A junior analyst hesitated, then spoke. Commander, evacuation patterns detected, non-random. 20 million civilians relocating along hardened corridors. Efficiency exceeds projected capability. Tathrix dismissed it with a flick of his claw. Irrelevant. They are moving cattle before the gates open. Another pause. Another update. Human military channels remain dark, the analyst added. No surrender codes. No emergency beacons. The bridge grew quieter. The usual background chorus of confidence thinned. Tathrix studied the human ships again. Their hulls were thick, excessively so. Layered composites, dense frames, redundant internal mass. Inelegant, wasteful, outdated. Mark their fleet as compliant by default, he said. If they will not speak, we will speak for them. A status line blinked amber. Human vessels. Power levels unchanged. Processing does not require consent. Tathrix initiated the final countdown, 6 minutes. The Council's energy arrays began to cycle, light gathering along crystalline spines. The first volley would be educational, not lethal, shock and awe, enough to break posture without annihilating infrastructure. He leaned back, satisfied. History would record this as routine. Another relic cleared from a valuable system. Another species folded into the lattice of order. Then the timer reached 0. No human ship moved. No signal broke the silence. But across the human formation, the mass shifted by fractions of a degree. Alignments tightened, vectors snapped into coherence. The silence did not break, it pressed back. For the first time since entering the system, Tathrix felt the bridge temperature drop as the tactical models recalculated, slowly. He did not cancel the order. He watched, suddenly alert, as the humans continued to say nothing at all. The Council spoke again, this time without amusement. Hi. Council Command issued the formal compliance packet in full, its tone precise and rehearsed. Jurisdictional transfer, military disarmament, civilian custodial oversight. The language carried the weight of 1,000 conquered systems, every clause polished by precedent. Earth was informed that sovereignty would be suspended for the duration of processing. Cooperation would reduce casualties, non-compliance would increase them. The packet ended with a countdown, 12 minutes until enforcement. It was then that the human fleet finally answered. The signal did not come from a flagship. It was not amplified or dramatized. One narrowband transmission, propagated outward, unencrypted, broadcast on civilian and military frequencies alike. The voice was steady, human, unhurried. "This is Earth Defense Command." No titles followed. No flourish. "You are ordered to withdraw from Sol space," the voice continued. "This system is sovereign. Our civilians are under protection. Your compliance window is open for 10 minutes. A murmur rippled across the council bridge. Tathrix's frill stiffened. Ordered. The translation engine flagged the phrasing twice to confirm intent. "You misunderstand," Tathrix replied, routing his voice through the same open channel. "You have been classified for processing. This is not a negotiation." The human voice returned immediately. "We understand the classification." A pause. Long enough to be deliberate. "We reject it." Sensors updated as the exchange continued. Planetary traffic surged. Not chaotically, but along defined corridors. Hardened routes lit up across Earth's surface and orbital space. Underground mag rails, shielded launch spines, evacuation platforms cycling in disciplined waves. Numbers populated the tactical display. Civilians relocated, $300,000. Projected within 30 minutes, 8,000. Igor projected within 90 minutes, 20,000. "Your evacuation efficiency exceeds expectation," Tathrix said, narrowing his gaze. "It will not alter the outcome." "It alters our obligations," the human replied. "Civilian zones are being cleared to reduce non-combatant exposure. That is the only concession you will receive." The calm in the voice was unsettling. No tremor, no strain. As if the speaker were reading weather conditions, not refusing a force 10,000 ships strong. "You are escalating without leverage," Tathrix said. "Your fleet is outnumbered 149 to 1. "Yes," the human said, "our models agree." A soft chime interrupted on the council bridge. Weapons officers confirmed readiness. Energy arrays reached full charge. Firing solutions resolved across the human formation. Probabilities stacking into certainty. The human transmission continued, unbroken. "We will not strike first. We will not fire into populated zones. We will not pursue retreating vessels beyond Sol's outer markers." Another pause. "If you advance, we will stop you." For the first time, Tathrix detected something new in the data stream. Human ships were still silent, but their internal mass signatures shifted. Reactor output remained low, yet inertial dampers spooled to standby. Armor plates adjusted by microns, overlapping, locking, prepared. "This is your final notice," Tathrix said. "Power down." "No," the human voice said. "This is yours." A standalone line appeared on several auxiliary screens as analysts flagged it for review. "Sovereignty is not a request." The countdown expired. Earth's evacuation counter rolled past 5,000 as the Council fleet began to advance, and the humans remained exactly where they were, waiting. The first volley was calculated to end resistance. Council fire lanced forward in synchronized bands, gravitic carriers feeding harmonic emitters, energy cohering into spear points that bent space as they traveled. 10,000 ships fired, in sequence, not all at once, an old lesson. Overkill wasted heat. Precision preserved infrastructure. The human fleet took the strike head-on. Light drowned the void. Sensors saturated. Predictive models climbed to certainty as the beams impacted human shields, or what passed for them. There was no elegant lattice, no phase shimmer. Just a dull, translucent shear that caught the energy and bled it sideways, dispersing it into heat and radiation. Then the numbers updated. Energy absorption efficiency, 91.4%. Residual bleed-through contained. Hull breach probability, negligible. The bridge went silent. Secondary impacts followed, riding the first wave focused on individual targets. A human cruiser vanished behind a curtain of white. When it cleared, the ship was still there, armor blackened, surface layers ablated, understructure intact. "Impossible," a weapons officer whispered. Tathrix did not answer. He watched as damage reports scrolled in from the human fleet, because they were broadcasting them openly. Hull loss measured in centimeters, internal casualties listed as 0, fire suppression engaged and complete in 14 seconds. They were letting the galaxy watch. Council gunners adjusted frequency, cycling through. Spectrums optimized against known defensive doctrines. The second volley hit harder, tighter, space warped. Sensors screamed. Absorption dropped to 88.2%. Still enough. Human armor drank the rest. Thick plates vaporized, shedding mass in controlled flares that carried heat away from critical frames. Redundant layers slid forward on mechanical tracks, sealing scars before vacuum could bite. A standalone line flashed across the human broadcast, flagged by council analysts. Still standing. Escalate, Tathrix ordered. Full output. The third volley was not restrained. It was meant to annihilate. Beams converged on 5 human ships at the center of the formation, energy densities calculated to overwhelm any passive system. For a moment, even Tathrix expected debris. Instead, the human ships brightened, reactors spiking just enough to feed their defenses. Absorption held at 84%. The remainder burned armor to slag, peeled away external mass, and dispersed. One ship rolled, slow and deliberate, presenting a fresh face to the fire. Survival rate across the human line updated in cold numerals. Fleet integrity, 100%. On the council bridge, confidence fractured. Fire control solutions began to wobble as targeting algorithms struggled to reconcile expectation with reality. Heat buildup climbed across council arrays. Cooling cycles lagged. Commander, an analyst said, voice tight. Our efficiency is dropping. Human defenses adapt within 3 seconds of frequency change. Adaptive without active emission. Passive learning. Tathrix felt the weight of the moment settle. This was not luck. It was design. The human transmission returned, calm as before. Your weapons are ineffective at current output. Civilian evacuation has reached 9,700,000. You are wasting time. A pause. Stand down. The council fired again, more from doctrine than reason. The result did not change. Another standalone line appeared, stripped of ornament. Fire does not decide this. As the last of the volley dissipated, sensors picked up something new. Human drives spooled past idle. Not into full burn, but into readiness. Inertial fields tightened. Formation vectors, aligned with mathematical precision, they had endured the storm. Now they were done waiting. Human acceleration rewrote the engagement in 8 seconds. Council tactical models assumed retreat or defensive. Drift. They did not account for mass-driven burn profiles, executed without warning. Human ships lit their drives simultaneously, not flaring bright, but surging forward on controlled thrust that spiked inertial readings across the grid. Velocity climbed past prediction bands, then doubled them. 67 ships moved as one. Vectors, tightening into overlapping cones, each hull angling by fractions of a degree. The formation did not scatter, it compressed. Range collapsed from 180,000 kilometers to 60,000 in under a minute. Fire control alarms rippled across the council bridge. Target solutions degrading, a gunnery officer reported. Human acceleration exceeds dampening assumptions. Relative. Vectors unstable. Tathrix snapped his attention back to the display. The human fleet was not charging blindly. They were slipping between probability cones, timing burns to coincide with council firing cycles. Every burst of acceleration arrived, just as enemy weapons recalibrated, forcing resets that stacked delay upon delay. Human ships were not faster. They were better timed. Council formations began to stretch. Elegant spacing optimized for energy. Projection became a liability as human vectors knifed inward. Capital ships found their arcs crowded. Escorts drifted out of position, trying to compensate. Range ticked down, 20,000 kilometers. 1,000 on 75,000 council beams fired again, but now they chased ghosts. Human hulls rolled, yawed and surged, presenting minimal cross-sections. Energy grazed. Armor instead of striking square. Absorption climbed back above 90% as angles improved. A human cruiser accelerated straight through overlapping firing lanes, drives screaming, armor flaring white-hot. It should have died. It didn't. It passed through the gap untouched, momentum carrying it deep into Council formation space. "Break and reform," Tathrix ordered. "Widen spacing!" Too late. Human maneuver groups peeled off in disciplined trios, each unit executing a mirrored burn that split Council firing solutions apart. Targeting locks fractured. Predictive paths diverged. The elegant lattice of Council coordination began to unravel. A standalone line cut across the shared feeds, stripped and cold. Range is a choice. Council ships collided, not violently, but catastrophically for precision. A cruiser clipped a carrier's containment field. Both lost cohesion, tumbling out of formation as their neighbors adjusted too slowly. Human ships threaded through the chaos, acceleration pulses measured to the millisecond. They were close enough now that Council sensors picked up hull detail. Thick, dim plates, overlapping seams, scars from the earlier barrage already sealed. Distance fell below 40,000 kilometers. At this range, Council energy weapons lost their advantage. Firing arcs narrowed, heat management spiked. Cooldown timers stretched. Human ships kept coming. "Commander," an analyst said, voice tight. "Human fleet cohesion remains at 100%. Ours has dropped to 82. Tathrix watched as the human formation finished its collapse maneuver, drawing the Council fleet inward, compressing it like a net pulled tight. Firing solutions overlapped uselessly. Every attempt to realign created another opening, another human message broadcast, quiet, almost courteous. "We are closing to kinetic range." Final notice. Evacuation counters rolled on auxiliary displays. Civilians. Relocated. 14 to 600,000 projected completion within 70 minutes. Council doctrine had no answer for this. They were built to dominate at distance, to overwhelm with precision fire and inevitability. They were not built to be crowded. They were not built to be rushed. Human ships settled into attack vectors with unnerving calm, drives easing just enough to hold position inside the Council's collapsing geometry. The last standalone line appeared as firing solutions failed across the grid. You let us get close, and then the humans opened their weapons ports. The first kinetic round crossed the distance. In less than a second. There was no warning tone, no energy bloom. One moment the Council cruiser existed, shields tuned for harmonic impact. The next, a tungsten slug the mass of a ground transport punched through its forward hull, ignored the field entirely, and exited through the aft spine. The ship came apart afterward. Internal pressure flashed to vacuum. Structural members failed in sequence, not explosion but collapse, the cruiser folding around the hole that should not have been possible. Impact confirmed, a Council officer breathed. Shield bypass. Railguns fired again. Human ships did not volley. They selected. Each shot was deliberate, spaced, timed to the millisecond. Slugs accelerated to relativistic fractions, guided by nothing but math and inertia. No emissions to track. No signatures to spoof. Capital ship, command node, power spine. 3 impacts, 3 kills. Casualty estimates populated the shared tactical. Dim feeds before the debris finished dispersing. Crew lost, $14 to $200. Escape pods launched, 312. Recovery probability, 41%. Human missiles followed, dark shapes blooming from recessed bays. They did not rush. They coasted, cold and silent, drifting through the broken geometry of the Council formation before igniting drives at close range. Point defense fired reflexively, energy bursts snapping into space. It wasn't enough. Missiles corrected in microburns, slipping past defensive arcs, detonating shaped charges directly against exposed hull seams. Not overkill. Enough to breach. Enough to disable. A Council dreadnought took 6 hits along its ventral line. Its reactors scrammed too late. The ship went dark, drifting, intact, but dead. Another standalone line appeared across the human broadcast. Kinetics do not ask permission, Tathrix. Watched his fleet unravel. Reports stacked faster than they could be processed. Firing solutions failed as human ships maneuvered inside minimum ranges. Railgun impacts climbed from dozens to hundreds. Human weapons officers spoke in calm cadence, their commands audible across the open channel. Target disabled. Secondary complete. Hold fire, pods away. Nuclear signatures registered next, and the bridge stiffened in instinctive fear. But the detonations were small, measured. Low-yield devices placed deep within already breached hulls. Energy contained inward, shredding reactors without expanding shock fronts. No planets were targeted. No civilian habitats flared. 3 council capitals died in nuclear silence, their cores collapsing without spectacle. Engagement time counter ticked past 47 minutes. Council fleet strength dropped below 90%. Commander, an analyst said, his voice unsteady. Human kill efficiency exceeds projections by 312%. They are prioritizing disablement over destruction. Tathrix could see it now. Ships left drifting instead of shattered, weapons silenced, drives gutted. Life support flickering but not erased, mercy applied through dominance. Human fire slackened as quickly as it had begun, railguns cooled, missile bays sealed. The sudden quiet was worse than the barrage, a human transmission cut through the chaos. "We have achieved local superiority," the voice said. "You are surrounded. Further resistance will increase your casualties without altering the outcome." Another pause. "Power down. We will secure your crews." Council fleet integrity slid to 76% as more ships went dark, their captains choosing survival over doctrine. Escape pods streamed out in glittering arcs, and human ships adjusted fire to avoid them. Tathrix felt the moment lock into place. The inevitable had inverted. The humans did not press for annihilation. They held position, weapons ready, rails still warm, waiting to see who understood the answer they had given. The next phase would not be decided by firepower, it would be decided by choice. The humans paused the killing without pausing the war. Across open channels, a new transmission replaced the clipped cadence of fire control. It carried no triumph, no threat. "Just context. Delivered as if the galaxy had asked for clarification. This action is limited to military targets," the human voice said. "We are enforcing a boundary, not pursuing extermination." The message propagated outward, rebroadcast, by neutral relays and stunned observers. It was not addressed to the Council alone. It was addressed to everyone watching. Council vessels still capable of movement found themselves bracketed. Human ships holding position at measured distances, close enough to fire, far enough to maneuver. Rails remained charged. Missile bays stayed sealed. The pressure was constant, deliberate. A second human speaker joined the channel, tone unchanged. "Our refusal is based on law, not sentiment. We do not recognize custodial ownership of sapient populations. We do not permit forced relocation. Slavery, under any administrative language, is a crime." The word echoed through translation engines, stripped of euphemism. Crime.Council command feeds erupted with internal traffic. Several member species ships broke from formation, attempting to pull back. Human vessels adjusted smoothly, intercept vectors tightening without firing. "No pursuit beyond soul markers," the human voice reminded. "You are free to withdraw." Withdrawals spiked. 37 ships powered down entirely. Another 90 altered course away from Earth, drives flaring as they fled the engagement zone. Human weapons tracked them, and then disengaged. A standalone line cut through the feeds, clean and cold. Dominance without cruelty. Tathrix listened in silence, his authority bleeding away with every second. This was not how conquest was supposed to feel. The humans were not rallying allies or declaring supremacy. They were drawing a line and daring the galaxy to examine why it existed. Evacuation counters rolled onward. Civilians relocated, 18,900,000 civilian. Casualties, 0. The offensive resumed in a narrower form. Human ships targeted only those council vessels still advancing or firing. Disablement patterns repeated with mechanical consistency. Drives gutted. Weapon spines shattered. Hulls breached just enough to end resistance. No strikes landed near Earth's surface. Orbital habitats went untouched, even when Council ships attempted to shelter behind them. Human formations shifted, accepting worse firing angles rather than risk collateral damage. Council losses climbed anyway. Fleet integrity fell to 61%. This is inefficient, a Council strategist protested over a fractured command channel. They could end us. Yes, another replied quietly, but that is not their objective. Human broadcasts continued, interleaved with tactical updates. We will provide medical aid to surrendered crews. Escape pods are marked and excluded from targeting. Command staff will be detained pending tribunal. Tribunal, the word spread faster than any weapon. Observers began to speak, first cautiously, then with rising clarity. Independent systems flagged the human message for rebroadcast. Archived Council practices resurfaced alongside it. Processing quotas, custodial mortality rates, lost cultures reduced to footnotes. Human ships did not comment. They did not need to. A final statement rolled across the channel, delivered without emphasis. We are not here to replace one empire with another. We are here to stop this. The firing slowed, not because the humans tired, but because fewer targets remained willing to test the line they had drawn. Council vessels drifted in clusters, weapons cold, crews waiting. Human ships settled into containment orbits, methodical and restrained, the shape of the battle transforming into something else entirely. Tathrix understood then that the war had already outgrown him. It was no longer about Earth. It was about what the galaxy would tolerate, now that someone had said no and proven they could enforce it. Human readiness did not appear suddenly. It surfaced. As the engagement stabilized, analysts across the Council and beyond began pulling older data, records dismissed for years as irrelevant, trade encounters, Razwed patrol footage, industrial output curves that never quite aligned with civilian demand. Patterns resolved with uncomfortable clarity. Human fleets rotated crews every 14 months, not for rest, but for cross-training. Every ship carried triple redundant command protocols, any lieutenant capable of assuming control within 0.8 seconds of loss. Damage control drills ran weekly, sometimes daily, logged and audited like weapons tests. They had not been improvising. Stockpile manifests surfaced next. Kinetic munitions stored in deep vaults across Luna, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Millions of rail slugs cast and sealed decades earlier, their mass budgets hidden inside infrastructure ballast allocations. Missile casings stacked in numbers that far exceeded any recorded conflict. Human logistics had planned for attrition before the first shot. Live feeds from within the human fleet began circulating, leaked not by humans, but by observers desperate to understand. Crews moved with practiced economy, faces calm, hands steady. No shouting, no panic. Orders acknowledged and executed without commentary. These were not conscripts reacting to invasion. These were professionals executing rehearsed contingencies. Council intelligence node finally connected the last thread. Archived human doctrine documents, partially redacted, stamped with dates stretching back 43 years. Scenario titles scrolled across analyst screens. Extrastellar, coercion response, energy dominant, adversary countermeasures, mass disparity engagement. 100.1. They had named this war before it happened. A standalone line, captured from a human internal briefing and now circulating everywhere, froze the narrative into place. This was never hypothetical. Human commanders rotated formations seamlessly as ships cycled through maintenance windows mid-battle. Damaged armor swapped for reserve plating in under 6 minutes. Reactors throttled. Down, then back up, as if the engagement were an exercise pushed into live conditions. Crew fatigue metrics stayed green. Even the evacuation timelines told the same story. Civilian corridors aligned perfectly with defensive arcs. Hardened shelters matched projected blast radii calculated decades prior. Nothing overlapped by accident. Civilians relocated, $20,000. Time elapsed, 92 minutes. 0 deviations. Council. Strategists finally grasped the scale of the miscalculation. Humanity had not waited for first contact to prepare. They had assumed it would be hostile, asymmetrical, and absolute. And they had built accordingly. A fractured council broadcast attempted damage control, reframing the encounter as an unfortunate escalation. It failed immediately. Observers compared timestamps. Humanity's preparations predated any provocation, any insult. This was not revenge. It was defense, planned to the end. Human ships continued to hold the perimeter, weapons ready but disciplined. Crews rotated shifts without ceremony. Medical teams prepped for intake, not celebration. The galaxy's understanding shifted by degrees, then by orders of magnitude. Humanity was not a sudden anomaly. It was a long, quiet variable that had finally been forced to reveal itself. They had prepared not because they wanted war. They had prepared because they believed someone, someday, would try exactly this. And now that someone was finding out what decades of readiness looked like when it was finally used. The clock passed 3 hours, and the pattern never broke. Human containment tightened with mechanical patience. Every council vessel still active was bracketed by overlapping arcs, human ships rotating positions with metronomic precision. No rush, no chaos, just pressure applied evenly, everywhere at once. Council attempts at counteraction failed in predictable ways. A cluster of cruisers surged toward the outer markers, drives flaring in a coordinated breakout. Human ships responded by shifting vectors, not firing immediately, letting the Council ships commit to acceleration before railgun rounds stitched, space ahead of them, not to destroy, to stop. 3 cruisers lost propulsion within 2 seconds. The rest powered down, rather than collide. Time elapsed, 3 hours, 18 minutes. Council ships disabled or surrendered, 6,412. The galaxy watched the numbers update in real time. Another pocket resisted near Jupiter's orbit, a dense knot of battleships, and escorts holding tight formation, shields layered, commanders clinging to doctrine. Human forces encircled them fully, 6 rings deep, firing solutions solved and resolved until no vector remained uncovered. Missiles launched, few, precise. 2 nuclear devices followed, low yield, detonated inside shield envelopes already compromised by kinetic strikes. Reactors collapsed inward. 5 battleships went dark without fragmenting. Human ships ceased fire immediately after. Survivors powered down. A standalone line appeared on the shared feeds, stripped of commentary. 6 hours is generous. By the 4th hour, resistance had become statistical noise. Council captains transmitted surrender codes in bursts, some orderly, others frantic. Human systems acknowledged each signal automatically, marking ships as secured and removing them from firing queues. Escape pods streamed, outward in controlled clouds. Human vessels adjusted course to avoid them, railguns tracking past living targets without hesitation or error. Civilian casualty counters across the system remained unchanged. 0. Council fleet integrity dropped below 40%. Tathrix's flagship drifted at the center of the collapse, weapons cold. Command authority hollowed out by reality. Reports arrived slower now, not because systems failed, but because there was less left to report. Time elapsed, 4 hours, 52 minutes. Council ships destroyed, 104. Council ships disabled, 7,893. Council ships surrendered, 1,003. Total accounted for 10,000. The last resistance flickered out near the heliopause. A lone destroyer refused to power down, firing erratically at human markers, its shots wide, its heat levels spiking into failure. Human ships did not answer immediately. They waited until its reactors destabilized, then fired once. The destroyer went dark, intact, tumbling slowly into nothing. Time elapsed. 5 hours, 59 minutes. Human ships held position for 60 more seconds. No new threats emerged. No hidden reserves, no late heroics. At exactly 6 hours, Human Command issued a system-wide update. Active hostilities concluded. All remaining Council vessels are secured or disabled. Medical and recovery operations commencing. The firing stopped everywhere at once. The silence that followed was not the stunned quiet of shock, but the controlled stillness of a task completed. Human ships maintained their orbits, weapons safed. but unmoved as recovery craft launched in disciplined waves. Boarding teams deployed with clear rules of engagement. No executions, no reprisals. Command crews detained. Medical aid rendered without distinction of rank or species. Council escape. Pods were retrieved and catalogued. Life signs stabilized. Names recorded. A final numerical summary propagated across every observing network. Engagement duration: 6 hours. Human ships lost: 0. Human crew fatalities: 0. Council combat losses: 100% neutralized. The galaxy absorbed the data in stages, disbelief giving way to comprehension. This had not been a battle of desperation or fury, it had been a methodical shutdown. Human ships remained exactly where they were, guardians of a quiet system ringed by drifting wreckage and surrendered fleets. The line around Earth held firm, unbroken, enforced not by rage but by discipline. 6 hours after the first shot, Sul space fell completely silent, and in that silence, every watching civilization understood the same thing. This was not chaos. This was control. The aftermath began, with doors opening, not guns firing. Human boarding craft moved among the disabled council ships in steady patterns, docking lights flaring briefly before cutting to dark. Teams crossed hulls that only hours ago had been instruments of certainty. Now they were silent, power cores cold, crews waiting to see what humans did next. The answer came quickly. Weapons were lowered before the first hatch was breached. Medical units entered first, scanning for radiation exposure, decompression, injuries, shock. Wounded council crew were stabilized where they lay. Restraints were applied only after treatment, standardized and non-invasive. Prisoners were counted, not culled. Council captains were escorted to holding decks aboard human. Ships, separated by rank, but afforded identical conditions. No interrogations, no punishment, just containment, food, and medical oversight. Numbers flowed across the system. Council personnel secured. 2,340,000 dollars. Medical cases treated within first hour. $118,000. Fatalities post-surrender. 0. A system-wide human broadcast followed. Calm and procedural. All detained personnel are classified as prisoners of war. They will be afforded protection under human military law. No summary executions will occur. Across the galaxy, observers leaned closer. A second transmission layered over the first, addressed outward rather than inward. Command staff and political authorities associated with custodial processing programs will face open tribunal. Charges include unlawful enslavement, forced population transfer, and crimes against sapient life. The word tribunal landed hard. Council legal doctrine had never allowed such a thing. Processing was administrative. Custodial loss was acceptable. Margin. Accountability ended at authorization. Humanity rejected all of it in a single sentence. We do not kill prisoners. We do not bury crimes under policy. A standalone line spread faster than the broadcast itself. Prisoners, not corpses. Political shockwaves rippled outward immediately. Member species governments issued emergency statements distancing themselves from council doctrine. Several worlds suspended tribute flows. 2 border coalitions announced withdrawals from council oversight within minutes of the broadcast. Archived data surfaced again, this time with context. Mortality tables. Cultural erasure indices. Council enforcement footage stripped of euphemism and replayed alongside human casualty reports that ended at 0. Comparison did the rest. Within Sol, recovery operations expanded. Human engineers stabilized damaged council ships to prevent reactor failures. Escape pods were retrieved and catalogued, their occupants logged by name, species, and condition. No one vanished into the dark. Tathrix was transferred last. Escorted, not dragged. His restraints were light. His medical scan took longer than his intake interview. You will be held pending tribunal, the human officer told him, voice level. You will have representation. Proceedings will be public. Tathrix searched for mockery. He found none. Why? He asked, the word brittle. The officer considered him for a moment. Because what you did has to be examined, not erased. Across the system, human ships began repositioning from combat posture to security lattice. Weapons stayed mounted. Rails stayed cold. Medical bays filled. Detention decks activated. Evacuation counters locked at completion. Civilians relocated. 20,000. Civilian casualties, 0. The galaxy recalculated in real time. Humanity had demonstrated dominance beyond dispute, and then refused to leverage it for terror. They had won completely and chosen restraint not as weakness but as principle. Commentators struggled to frame it. Analysts abandoned old categories. This was not conquest, not liberation, not deterrence as previously understood. It was enforcement of a moral boundary backed by force and followed by law. Humanity did not celebrate. They processed paperwork. They treated wounds. They prepared courts. As the last prisoners were secured and the wreckage field stabilized, a quiet truth settled across every observing network. Whatever came next, the galaxy would remember this. A moment, not for the ships destroyed, but for the lives deliberately left intact. Victory did not loosen humanity's grip on procedure. Recovery operations continued for hours after the last surrender. Debris fields mapped and stabilized. Council hulls towed into controlled orbits. Sol space shifted from battlefield to ledger. Every wreck accounted for. Every prisoner logged. Every radiation plume measured and contained. Human command traffic thinned to essentials. No speeches. No declarations of triumph. The work continued because it had to. Then the outer sensors spoke. It began as a discrepancy at the edge of long-range arrays, beyond the heliopause, far past where the Council fleet had emerged. A faint distortion. Not a signal. An absence where one should have been. Starfield occlusion inconsistent with known mass shadows, human analysts flagged it quietly. Range, 0.42 light-years. Relative drift, inbound velocity, uncharacterized. Additional sweeps refined the picture. The anomaly was not singular, it was layered, moving in parallel vectors, its profile smoothed by something that absorbed or bent detection. It did not radiate. It did not broadcast. It simply advanced. A classified channel opened across human command. Sensor officers compared notes without urgency, their voices steady. Models ran in silence. Predictive cones bloomed and collapsed, unable to lock parameters that refused to behave like known physics. "This is not Council," one analyst said. No one argued. The human fleet adjusted formation, almost imperceptibly. Perimeter ships rotated outward. Deep space arrays were retasked. Long-dormant listening posts along the rim woke from decades of standby. They had been waiting for this kind of silence. A briefing packet propagated to secured observers, stripped of speculation and framed in data. Unidentified outer rim movement. Detected, the human voice said. No hostile action observed, no communication attempted, monitoring ongoing. A pause. This development does not alter current terms. Sol remains closed to coercive entry. Across the galaxy, attention shifted. The Council's defeat was already settling into history, its implications still unfolding. This was something else. Something that had not announced itself with demands or fleets, something that had not bothered to speak at all. Council prisoners were informed of the detection as a matter of protocol. Several reacted with visible unease. Some species recognized the signatures, or the lack of them, and went very still. Tathrix said nothing. He stared at the projection in the holding bay, frills drawn tight. And for the first time since entering Sol space, he looked afraid of something that was not human. Human command did not comment on that reaction. They expanded the sensor net. Evacuation. Shelters on Earth began standing down, civilians returning in controlled phases, cities powered back up. Traffic resumed. The planet below rotated on, unbroken, alive. Human ships remained in orbit, vigilant, unchanged by the quiet beyond the rim. A final internal status update circulated through the fleet. Council threat, neutralized. Human, losses, none. Unknown contact, under observation. One more line followed, not broadcast, not shared. Preparedness posture maintained. The galaxy exhaled, slowly, uneasily. Humanity had drawn a boundary and enforced it with absolute control. They had proven restraint where annihilation would have been easier. And now, beyond the reach of empire and doctrine, something else was moving. Humanity did not announce anew, or they adjusted their stance, widened their gaze, and waited, ready as they had always been for whatever came next.